Welcome back to Canada Talks 167. Everything is political. We are in the post-debate analysis phase of the Munk Debate, the leaders' debate. That was about an hour and 47 minutes. Harper, Mulcair, Trudeau. Fascinating debate. We've been parsing it out, some shots on all sides. Trudeau invoking his father's legacy. His father died 15 years ago on this very day. And Stephen Harper talking about keeping Canada secure and the security mission. Thomas Mulcair talking about revoking the controversial Bill C-51. Lots of issues. Let's bring in two people who watch this very differently and from a very unique perspective. The former ambassador to the UK, the former ambassador to the EU, and many other places. Longtime diplomat Jeremy Kinsman joins me on the line right now, as does lawyer and analyst Mohamed El Rashidy, who was with us earlier on in the night. Jeremy Kinsman, you listen to... This is the first time we've ever had a debate on foreign policy in a federal election. I'm fascinated to hear your thoughts about what you thought was accomplished and what stood out to you.
Well, I think the first thing that was accomplished is exactly what you said, that it took place. Canada is a country that's highly internationalist. We depend on the world. And we've always, generally had a consensus on foreign policy. Disagreement kind of stopped at the water's edge historically. Now that isn't true. And I thought that this came out in the debate. It didn't come out as forcefully and as clearly as I might have hoped. I think Stephen Harper was defending his record and the status quo. I've got to say that he came across very much as a kind of status quo guy. I mean, if you like him, you think he's a competent status quo guy. But he isn't a great guy in anticipating the changes ahead. He is going to protect us. He's going to take care of us. He's going to manage things. Whereas I thought Justin Trudeau was a lot more aspirational. I don't mean in any naive way, but I thought that what he was saying was geared much more toward the future, whether it's on our obligations on climate change or the opportunities inherent in trade agreements or trying to work for a better United Nations, contributing to that peacekeeping project that Obama said today he was hoping for. I felt he was more aspirational. And if the election is about change, and if so, I felt he came across as the agent of change. That was my reaction to it. But issue by issue, as we went through the debate, different people are going to have different opinions.
Well, you've summed up exactly kind of the big picture. Trudeau is talking about being a change. So is Mulcair. They want the change agent. And, of course, Stephen Harper wants to be the agent of, well, the status quo. Change is risky. Stay with what you got. Mohamed El Rashidy, let me just bring in Mohamed El Rashidy on this. Your thoughts. You and I spoke before the debate about some of the fundamental issues like the niqab, which didn't play a major role in this, but is certainly the Syrian refugee issue and the security issue came up. What jumped out at you in this debate?
A lot of things jumped up. I thought it was a very good debate. I thought the three candidates staked out their grounds pretty well. I thought Trudeau looked good, Evan. I thought the way he dressed, the way he presented himself, I thought he was very strong in French. I'm seeing a great strength in him when he speaks in French. And I thought Mulcair's Parisian accent, I like it. I think it has a good effect. Overall, I mean, I think the crowd's reaction to things, to lines like ISIS is the greatest threat to our freedom, not CSIS. I find these things very troubling. They're very catchy, but it's sad to see that this is what the debate has come down to. I mean, ISIS in no way presents a threat to our freedom in Canada. ISIS is all the way in Syria and Iraq, and the best it could ever muster is a bunch of individuals here. And they would never threaten our freedom. The only way our
perception matters.
Exactly. And that's why I say Harper is such a talented politician. And I tie that to his political acumen in when the debate about revocation of citizenship came up. You see how he was able to counter the points by Justin Trudeau about, you shouldn't be taking away Canadian citizenship. And he said, well, we do it all the time to war criminals. And unfortunately, the debate and the formats don't allow for deeper analysis. Mr. Harper is using the fact that we revoke war criminal citizenship in sort of a distortive way. We do that because the way they got their Canadian citizenship is on false grounds. They would have to lie to get Canadian citizenship, which definitely we can all agree is grounds to take back Canadian citizenship. But if a Canadian citizen achieves Canadian citizenship, whether it be by birth or through naturalization, you cannot then go back and take their citizenship because of a future act. And this is why this is so troubling. We're talking about, I'm not going to defend somebody who plotted a terrorist act. That's a losing venture, and we should all condemn that. But the idea that we're going to somehow take away citizenship from Canadian citizens because we don't like what they did. I mean, what about child rapists? What about them? I mean, I think of Paul Bernardo and other examples. And how come nobody ever said we're going to take their citizenship?
Right, that's the question. Where do you draw the line on this?
Exactly. And so that's one. And I can go into other things. His emphasis on ISIS and connecting it to the refugees, Evan, is very troubling. The reality is the battle on the ground isn't just about ISIS. ISIS is one of many players. They've killed a fraction. In fact, the regime itself has killed over 7 times more civilians than ISIS. So, it's using these very convenient, very catchy things in order to advance this whole fear mongering that we've talked about earlier. One thing that also stuck in my mind, and I think is worth emphasizing, is when Thomas Mulcair called out the Prime Minister on his anti-Muslim rhetoric and how he points out and fingers mosques. And we talked about that earlier, if you recall, before the debate. How he says, it
was very surprising to see him say, you're picking on them because, let me bring Jeremy Kinsman here, but he did. That was a very sharp exchange, and he actually called him out on that.
Do you recall what the Prime Minister said? And this is what the dog whistling we're talking about. He said absolutely nothing. And that, to me, was the loudest of all. Stephen Harper didn't feel the need to defend himself against accusations of riling up anti-Muslim sentiment in this country. And I'll tell you why. Because he wears it as a badge of honor. And that is very troubling.
Let me talk about some of the broader issues here. Jeremy Kinsman, former ambassador. There was this sense that the relationship with the U.S. had deteriorated. One of the costs was Keystone, although to me that's unclear. I mean, Harper's supported the U.S.-led mission in Syria. That hasn't led to any results. They supported the U.S.-backed mission in Libya. That didn't lead to Keystone. What's your sense about how different life would be from a foreign policy point of view if there was not a conservative government but an NDP government and or a Liberal government?
I don't think it's a question, Evan, of which party's in power. I think it's a question of which guy is prime minister. I mean, I worked for Brian Mulroney, who had an absolutely superb relationship with American presidents. Not just Reagan. In fact, I think he even had a more productive relationship with the elder George Bush, and he would have had one with Clinton, because he placed, as Trudeau I think said, enormous priority in ensuring that he have a good relationship with the guy who's running that country. And look, I spent a lot of time in Washington. I mean, everybody's very polite about this. Harper has a lousy relationship with Obama. It seems to everybody Harper doesn't like Obama's politics. He prefers vastly the Republican opposition. And Obama doesn't like this guy who doesn't have any skin in a lot of games, taking a kind of a different approach to issues that are very vital politically to Harper.
That actually got a big laugh, Jeremy, tonight.
Agreement.
So that was a big laugh when Harper said, I've got a great relationship with Obama. People literally laughed.
How that relationship at the top is nurtured and managed politically and personally.
Yeah, and that is important. Jeremy, let me just stick with you real quick on this other issue, which is on the refugee issue.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating issue. There's lots going on, and Mohamed El Rashidy was speaking about this as it's kind of a Trojan horse issue. It carries inside of it all sorts of other domestic issues. How did you think that played out tonight? What did you listen for there?
Are you asking me, Evan?
Yeah, I'm asking you, Jeremy Kinsman, former ambassador.
I've been, we've been talking about this before, of course, and I think that as was said just now, Harper rings some emotional fears and bells with words that suggest other words. And what he's really saying is that we don't really want to take a lot of risky refugees in here, code word, risky Muslim refugees. And it sounds as if Trudeau and Mulcair are saying, listen, this is a humanitarian crisis. We've always stepped up before. We've had security issues before, and we got to do it. In fact, the matter is, if you want to do it, you can do it. It's not going to solve the 60 million people, but it is going to get some good Canadians. I mean, I think somebody said today, if you're looking at a man and a woman and two little kids, and he's an ophthalmologist or something, or he's a news broadcaster or something tremendously respectable like that, and he's got his kids, and he's fleeing tyranny, and I agree, he's more likely to be fleeing Assad than ISIS, that's for sure, and he wants to live in Canada, and he's grateful, well, you can be pretty sure that as you do your security checks, you're going to find that this is a person you want to have in your country. And you just go ahead and do it. And we can do it, and we're not doing it. And I think they were right to say that the reason it's not happening is because the government is playing both sides against the middle and catering to fears and worries. Harper twice said the Europeans who are taking them, open the doors, are now regretting it.
Yeah, they regret it.
I don't agree with that, but he said it, and maybe he even believes it.
You know, some of these issues are going to come up, I think, more profoundly and more specifically in the last couple minutes I've got with you guys. In the French language debate, the TVA debate, which comes up on Friday, Mohamed. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was going to say, obviously, for a country like Canada with our history of taking in newcomers and having them excel and build this great country that we all live in, and then to turn it around and be the country that is afraid of newcomers is alarming to me.
Good point.
Of course, this idea that refugees are going to take our jobs. I mean, since when are Canadians afraid of newcomers taking their jobs? This is such a European, xenophobic, other old world mentality. The new world is all about welcoming people. And, I can't help but think that it's as a result of the last 10 years or so where this government does not promote the stories and the achievements of newcomers. I mean, I look at our Supreme Court, right? You've got a Supreme Court judge whose parents survived the Holocaust and came here as a refugee. And look, tremendous stories that would bring tears to anyone's eyes. And to see that's what Canada was built on. And to then turn it around and say, oh, we have to be worried and we got to do security checks, as if we've been running this country without doing security checks, as if people who wear the niqab can somehow get on planes without being checked and their identifications aren't checked. Completely insane. Canada has very good laws. That's why we've gotten where we've gotten. And it's got great citizens who are not afraid to welcome newcomers to build an even greater country. And as was said in the debate, to address our previous problems rather than create new ones, right? And so that was one of the weaknesses. And listen, I think Stephen Harper, as I said many times, is a very talented politician. What does scare me as a realist is when I hear him say things like the Keystone will pass. We just heard Hillary Clinton come out against Keystone.
That was fascinating.
How do you say that when the Clintons are now against it?
Well, here's how you say it. I mean, and I'm gonna have to leave it here, but
sure.
The key thing, and you both know this, but when you're watching these debates, the facts, we fact check a lot. Stephen Harper talks about the greatest job growth since 2008, the recession. True if you calculate job growth from 2008, not if you calculate it in the last 3 or 4 years. Actually, Canada's been very tepid on that. But it's not the facts. It's playing to the constituencies. On the Keystone, it's not that he's right on that. He hasn't got that done for 10 years. It's that he wants to look like he's standing up for Canadian values to a certain constituency. So they're playing now from policy. It's moving to symbols, and we're watching that. Last word to you, Jeremy Kinsman, because you're an ambassador. You've been waiting a long time to have a substantial debate on foreign policy. Did it live up to your expectations?
Look, Evan, I thought we had three very smart and competent guys up there. Okay, they have different views. I have my views about which ones I like best. But I got to say that they were three competent guys. Anybody, by the way, who said Justin Trudeau isn't ready yet pays a price for making the biggest mistake you can make in politics and maybe in life, and that's underestimating somebody. I thought that he was strong, good, solid. But Harper was a solid prime minister, if that's what the kind of prime minister you want. And Tom Mulcair, we know, is very bright. And I think the country, really should actually feel good about the people running in this election compared to the nonsense we see south of the border.
How Canadian are we? All three, everyone's a winner, no one's a loser. Welcome to Canada. That's the kind of democracy. And maybe that's going to lead to some coalition talk after October 19th. Jeremy Kinsman, former ambassador to the EU and to the UK. Fantastic to have you back on the program. Always provocative, always thoughtful. And Mohamed El Rashidy, lawyer and analyst, always a pleasure to have you on both sides of this debate. Thanks so much, gentlemen. Foreign policy debates, let's make that a habit. I like it. Look forward to talking to you all again.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Mohamed.
Have a good one. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you.